Hi, yay, I've got a microphone, thank you. Well, are we ready? I mean, I'm ready. Is everybody else? I guess I could just start, I suppose. Hello. Hi, welcome to my talk, DevSecOps in Action, Achieving Continuous Compliance with GitLab. My name is Dominique. I'm a solutions architect at GitLab. I'm originally from the Netherlands. Been living in the UK for about 7 years. I mostly work with enterprise customers throughout the UK and the rest of Northern Europe, so some in the Nordics. Customers are mostly in the finance industry, like retail, automotive, that kind of vibe. Been with GitLab a little over a year. Was a solutions engineer at HashiCorp before that for 3 years. Yeah. I'm also pretty involved with some of the community stuff around DevOps in London. So I run DevOps Days London. Also part of Open UK as an ambassador. Does anybody know what Open UK is? Open UK is an organization that is mostly focused on the support of open source hardware, software, and data in the UK. So there's a bunch of really smart people trying to influence policy, trying to educate some kids, forge more community vibes in the country, which is pretty cool. Have done some Docker London meetups before COVID, still trying to get that started again. So if you want to hang out with me and organize some meetups, hook me up. So I'm also a singer and a techno DJ. So if you're into that kind of stuff, feel free to talk to me about that as well. And lastly, before I continue, I have ADHD. I get distracted really quickly and I talk really fast. So I know this. This has always been the feedback of a lot of people that have seen my talks. Please, dummy, slow down. But if I get excited, I just can't help myself. So help me help you. If you feel like I'm going too quick, please just please just slow down. That helps. So, and if it doesn't look like I'm actually responding, please just wave a bit harder. I promise you this is going to be helpful for everyone. Okay, so last thing, throughout the presentation are going to be a couple of QR codes on the screen. I know it's about security as well, but you can trust me, I won't back you. It will just be extra resources. So this, this is particularly this is my LinkedIn LinkedIn profile, and there's be some other resources like PDFs and websites and stuff. Again, I promise it's what it's supposed to be. Right, so I have 50 minutes apparently, which is a very long time for somebody with my condition. So hopefully we can get on the journey together, and this is what I'll be covering today. So hopefully by the end of it, you should have a better understanding of how GitLab can help you become and stay compliant. All right, let's get into it. Did you know that cybercrimes are currently estimated to incur a global annual cost of more than 5 trillion euros? That is 12 zeros after the dot. This means that cybersecurity has to be taken seriously across entire organizations instead of just security teams. In fact, governments around the world are creating new regulations to help contain the negative economic effects. So about December, a couple of months ago, the leadership of the European Union, I know I'm very much aware of where we are, but the leadership of the European Union has approved a new Cyber Resilience Act, which is a legal framework that describes the cybersecurity requirements for organizations that have software in the EU market. So even though we are not in the EU anymore, some of you might actually work with organizations that have software in the EU. So this is important to keep an eye out on. Once this is adopted into law, the CRA makes it a legal requirement for people, for manufacturers, to have an understanding of what's going on inside of your software, throughout the entire software delivery lifecycle. Companies would only have 3 years to implement this. So even if your company was already bound by a bunch of different regulations and compliance rules and stuff, there's yet another one to keep your eye out for. So what is the solution here? So many organizations have adopted a DevOps or DevSecOps way of working, but even if there are some common themes with these methodologies, your mileage may vary. So let's start with a bit of a level set. I know, I'm assuming that most of you will know what it is, but for the people at home and people that are looking at this for the first time, it might be nice to have a bit of a level set when it comes to the evolutionary sort of DevOps versus DevSecOps kind of point of view. If I'm standing here, then I'm in front of the screen, am I? So I'm just going to go back here. This is going to be an interactive session, folks. No, I'm kidding. Right, so I won't dive deep into this because, again, I'm assuming that you know most of what it's already. But DevOps is a software engineering methodology aiming to integrate the work of development and operations teams by facilitating a culture of collaboration and shared responsibility, bridging the gap between development and operations. We all knew this, right? Often you hear people, process, and technology in that order. And that's also the order from most difficult to change and easy or simple to influence. Some of the core principles include automation of your software delivery lifecycle, collaboration and communication, continuous improvement, minimizing waste or lean, being user-focused and having short feedback loops. Breathe. Another thing you hear people say often is fail fast, fail often, which further stipulates the need for continuous improvement and communication and getting to better user value and a better product faster. DevSecOps extends this methodology. If you've read the influential book that made the DevOps movement popular, The Phoenix Project, who has read this? A healthy amount of people here. So if you have, you understand the importance of automation and consistency, metrics and collaboration. I'm assuming some of you will already do this without having read the book. But for DevSecOps, you're effectively applying these techniques to the SDLC in your organization, but embedding security capabilities along the way rather than it being its own silo process. So traditionally, the teams will say no after developers have worked really hard to get their features over the line. Both developers and security teams can find vulnerabilities, but developers are usually first in line to actually fix something, if they found. Usually first in line to fix any found threats. So it does make sense to empower people to fix these flaws and do the right things with them. So scanning alone is really not enough. So it's about getting the right results to the right people at the right time with the right context for quick action. Which is why we do what we do. This is going to perhaps be a little bit like the line. GitLab is the most comprehensive and leading AI-powered DevSecOps platform. GitLab gives teams better insights, greater efficiency, improved collaboration, and faster time to value. By uniquely creating this offering as a single platform, we are able to provide our customers with end-to-end visibility across their entire software development lifecycle. But what it actually means is that you have one platform to rule them all, basically. So let's talk a little bit about shifting security left. Still going at the right tempo? Yeah? Okay, yes. Right, okay. So as I mentioned earlier, traditionally security teams used to be separate silo teams, and in some organizations that still might be the case. In a more DevOps flow, you'd have engineering teams wanting to push things into production fast, having security teams just throttling the speed of release, having to do checks, and sometimes these are manual checks. And humans are error prone, so which is fine, but if you know what you're doing, and if you are able to spot these things quick, but security teams or security people are very hard to come by, and if you only have a small team and loads of developers just throwing things over the fence, it's just not really useful, right? So it's not really, you're basically just like slowing down your rate of innovation. So, shifting left means that basically doing your security scans early on in the process while the code is still being developed, and this early detection allows you to empower your devs to fix and find and fix any found threats pretty much before you merge anything, before you put it into production. Everybody happy? Right, so this is the first QR code that you can scan that has actual things. But there are a wide range of threats out there that can affect your software delivery lifecycle, either through direct attacks or through exploiting various parts of your software supply chain. Given the headlines of the high-profile attacks recently, CVEs and new sort of mandates like the aforementioned Cyber Resilience Act, as well as some of the executive orders in the US, It's no surprise that in our annual DevSecOps survey, both last year and the year before, security was the #1 investment priority for the majority of the companies that we've spoken to. The report for this year is being finalized. It's either still being conducted or being analyzed at the moment. But if you want to have a copy of the last year and the year before's reports, then that will lead you to a website with the ability to download the reports. But how can you identify vulnerable software in GitLab, you ask? Right? So there are a variety of different scanners you can use, and they all get performed as part of the GitLab CI pipeline. There are some pre-built and some post-built scanners. I'm not going to name all of them, but some noteworthy mentions here include secret detection. We'll scan your code for any secrets because you know, sometimes people check in API keys or cloud credentials into your repo, and you don't really want that. I've seen people do that at my previous company, and that was they got a bill because they forgot to turn something off. And anyway, long story short, it was a big bill, and it was not very fun for just a person like trying to do something in the demo. So secret detection is quite useful. SAST, I always struggle with saying this properly. Static application security testing. I'm just going to call it SAST. We'll scan your application source code and your binaries for any known vulnerabilities. Then your dependency scans will scan your dependencies for any known vulnerabilities. And then your license compliance will either check for explicitly approved or denied licenses. And on the post-build side, we have container scanning, because you kind of want to know if the image that you're using is based on a Docker image with known vulnerabilities. And your DAST, again, dynamic application security testing. When I was doing my dry run, I was struggling saying this quickly. So I'm just going to say DAST. We'll scan for any runtime threats, leveraging the review application in GitLab to check against the OWASP top vulnerabilities. And you can also bring your own tools and leverage the remediation and policy enforcement capabilities within the merge request. So yes, you can integrate with the scanners you have at home. So this is, again, one of my favorite things about GitLab, being the one DevSecOps platform. Some people might think that it means that you have to replace everything that you have and only use GitLab for things. But I think specifically with security, I think it's quite necessary to use more scanners than you need. But if you use GitLab as your foundation to build on, you can still do the whole policy thing within GitLab and having this everything as a one nice little foundation. Right. Let's talk about this analogy. Oh, I forgot to change that. Right. So in the first panel over here, the racer here is pretty confident that he's going to win because he's got a very big engine in his otherwise pretty normal car. But having a really big engine in your car that makes it go super fast, it does not necessarily mean you're going to win. If you have a failing steering wheel or failing brakes, then it's much more likely that you're going to end up on a stretcher instead. In fact, some of the fastest cars on the planet, Formula 1 cars, only have a small 1.6 liter four-stroke engine, so size does not really matter in this case. So putting it differently, when having all of these fantastic security scanners and all that kind of stuff, scanning for all of the things, but you don't have any proper governance in place, again, you're much more likely to end up on the front page of the papers. The Telegraaf is a very large newspaper in the Netherlands, which is, again, where I'm from. So, right. So GitLab offers a variety of overarching capabilities that you can leverage to become, let's say, compliant. Overarching. You know how long it took me to get all of these little arrows? Anyway, right. So let's dig into those a little bit. So what to do beyond your scans. As I said before, having all of your scanners is fantastic, and it's a great start, but you will need to action the findings. So these capabilities are at the core of this, and I'll be going into them one by one. Let's start with vulnerability management. So you got the scanners, you got some findings, and maybe in different formats, what can you do with the results? So vulnerability report is giving you a single and consistent view, either at group or project level, of all of the threats that have been identified by your security scans. This allows you to manage all the vulnerabilities in one place. So at a bit of a flyby, you can see the vulnerabilities per criticality, a detailed report of all the vulnerabilities found, any known remediation paths if it has any, and the latest pipeline that and the ID of the latest pipeline that the vulnerability report got its information from. And you can even export this for people who love a soft copy of these types of reports. It's useful with audits and stuff. All right, so have a bit of more water because this is a tough topic. I have spoken to a lot of companies in highly regulated industries that struggle with compliance management. It's just a very, very, very complex thing. It's, ensuring compliance is really not simple. It requires a lot of time and effort from a lot of people who are generally smarter than me to have a good understanding of all of these requirements, the complexity of these requirements, and then integrating these into your SDLC. Some of these requirements, the compliance requirements, are super ambiguous as well, so being compliant looks different for different organizations. The Compliance Center in GitLab makes it a lot easier, at the very least, to centrally manage some of your compliance violations, your standards adherence, your compliance frameworks, and then designating these frameworks to specific projects. And I'd like to talk a bit more about compliance frameworks next. So compliance frameworks are effectively labels that apply common settings to certain projects. It means that you can designate projects with specific compliance needs, for example, ISO 27101 or whatever the ISO, PCI DSS, HIPAA, the works. So you can basically create a label that whenever you see that label, certain settings will be applied to this project. So you can also integrate with external compliance management systems with webhooks. And one of personally the more interesting features for me within the compliance frameworks is the ability to enforce certain pipeline configurations to run. Which brings me to the enforcement of scan execution. So if we talk about enforcing scan execution, automating this enforcement is pretty much, in my opinion, essential to ensure that all of the crucial tests and checks are performed regularly, regardless of what developers put in their pipeline configurations themselves. So currently, GitLab offers two methods of doing this. So at the moment, compliance frameworks allow you to add a optional GitLab CI YAML configuration that will be injected into the existing pipeline. And scan execution policies are used to enforce security scans to run either on a scheduled cadence or also as part of the pipeline. So at the moment, we are working on a more unified experience between the two. In fact, I think some of these are already more merged. I was doing a version of this talk a couple of weeks ago, and it was literally like 2 days after the in 16.11, when we released 16.11, they added the compliance frameworks to the scan execution policy scope, which meant that I had to change everything. But when I was looking at the demo yesterday, it looked like you can already include custom CI jobs in your scan execution policy today if you're on SaaS. So that's going to look nicer. At the moment, you can still use the optional configuration in the compliance framework if you want to. I'll show that in a moment anyway. Right, so a bit about SBOMs, or software bill of materials. It's a nested inventory, or a list of ingredients that make up the meal that is your software components. And it has emerged as a key building block in the software security and supply chain risk management. It's also the foundation of understanding what's happening in your software. So within the pipeline, GitLab will scan your application and container dependencies and create an SBOM of the dependencies a license is used. If you want to know more about this, this goes to a link to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So this goes to the website specifically about SBOM. So in GitLab, your SBOM is presented in CycloneDX format, which is a bill of materials specification, which is backed by the OWASP Foundation. OWASP, if you didn't know, is the Global Information Security community, and they're actually currently pursuing international ECMA standardization for this format. As such, you can also use third-party CycloneDX generators to generate SBOMs of your software, and any CycloneDX SBOM produced by anywhere in your pipeline will still be ingested inside of GitLab. And your dependencies and licenses are constantly scanned for vulnerabilities. So, having a list of your ingredients, an ingredients list is fantastic, but how does it help me in my compliance journey? Well, so once you know what's happening in your software, you can start streamlining your approvals process. In many organizations, and it might be in yours as well, the review process is pretty all or nothing. There's one gate of work, and one person, usually with very little time, or a couple of people with very little time, are required to review everything and anything, which is not particularly effective. So within GitLab, you can granularly define all kinds of different policies and block merge requests from being merged until the appropriate approvals are in place. Again, I'll show you that in a moment. If you haven't used GitLab before, the merge request is pretty much the heart and soul of GitLab. It's where work is being done, it's where the pipelines are being reviewed, and it's the comments section is below the fold here, is where you have discussions with different people and where you can take action from. Every time a developer commits code, a pipeline gets run and the scans get performed. So it's good to note that even though your scans get performed on the whole repository, in the merge request, developers can only see the context of what they just committed. So anything that they're about to introduce newly into the potentially into the code base. So this gives you pretty much near real-time feedback on any sort of new vulnerabilities you're about to introduce. We really want to give people actionable insights, and actually, no one wants to wade through loads of logs and try to figure out what's going on, right? Right, so let's go into the next section where GitLab allows you to facilitate a culture of shared responsibility for releasing secure software. So policies are enforced right from the merge request, and it makes it easy for developers to see who needs to approve what, and for approvers to see why they've been pulled in, and make an informed decision with all the information necessary without having to switch tools or platforms. So if we go through some of the examples on the screen here, please note that the names of these policies are arbitrary. I recommend that whoever is responsible for these put something useful in place. Because, I would like to see stuff that's what it says. It does what it says on the tin. So if we go on the top, the coverage check, for example, is a specific policy that requires approval if the test coverage declines, for which the responsibility could sit with your QA teams or your testing teams. Next up, we have the license check, which will check for inherently denied licenses or explicitly denied licenses. And the vulnerability check will trigger if a vulnerability of the high or more high critical severity is found. Responsibility for this could sit with security. Next, you have your code owner's file. It's pretty extensive. I'm assuming most of you will have seen one of those, but you can automatically require approval if something changes in a particular file or path within an application. And then lastly, you've got some external checks. So these status checks are API calls to external systems. For example, if you need to request the status of an external requirement. Again, on the topic of external tools, the policies that check for licenses and vulnerabilities are enforced regardless of where the information came from. So if you have any external tools integrated here, the policies will enforce regardless and indiscriminately. Right. I wanted to talk really briefly about AI-powered workflows with GitLab Duo. Now, this is not what my talk is about, but I do want to have it said because it is something that we focus on a lot these days. Again, I won't bore you with too many slides. So not very long ago, we released GitLab Duo, which is our suite of capabilities that provide AI-assisted workflows for everyone involved in developing software. So our approach is differentiated in three major ways. Firstly, AI is integrated throughout the entire SDLC rather than just in small portions of it. We've also built our AI capabilities to be privacy first and with transparency in mind, because we know that privacy is pretty critical for our customers. And lastly, have architected Duo to use best-in-class models, because why wouldn't you use the best-in-class models? Okay, so this is the, let me just get some more water, because I always get like very dry mouth here. Again, pacing is still okay? Lots of nodding heads, fantastic. Right, so as you can see, we are building efficiency gains throughout the entire software development lifecycle, all the way from idea to production. So this is the same workflow as I showed earlier in the presentation, but let's go into some of these capabilities. I'm not going to go into it too deep, as I said, but it's good to know that it is something that could assist you if you wanted to. Right, so you can have, so that's the first couple of things. Every time you see like a little Tanuki logo, like a blue one, that's generally where one of the functionalities is being embedded. Some highlights include well, because everything starts with like an issue and everything, the generation of issue descriptions I find really useful. The epic and issue summary is particularly useful. I was at a, whoops. I was at an event, a GitLab event, a couple of months ago, and one of our product directors for GitLab Dedicated was doing a presentation, and specifically the issue summary came up, and he said, sometimes I get tagged in things, hey, can you please have an opinion about this? And that usually means like, oh, all right, we'll go have a coffee, sit there, try to read through 70 comments, try to figure out what's going on. And the issue summary is literally just click a button, it will tell you, this is what's being discussed, this is what people are asking your opinion on, which I think is pretty cool. It saves you loads of time. So that's definitely been something that's been helpful internally as well. So on the security side of things, and this is something that I hope to be able to show you in my demo later as well. But code suggestions, everybody knows that. It's like a generative AI, like will be in your IDE. You can will help you write your code if you want to. But more interesting things are, for example, root cause analysis. That's something that I use pretty often. If I have a pipeline or something and something fails, you can click a button that says like, hey, you forgot something here. Hey, this is looking for something that's not there yet. So that's been helpful for me at least. Same with the merge request summary. So if you've created a merge request from an issue and you've changed all some things, and then at some point you can say, summarize whatever's happened, and it will add it automatically to the merge request, so it makes it easier for people to figure out what the hell has been going on before merging. So that about that one. And then on the last bits, and these are a couple of my favorites, it's the vulnerability summary, as well as something that's coming out soon is vulnerability remediation. So if your scans has found anything, obviously the vulnerability remediation and merge request itself is already pretty useful. But if you want to go even a step further than that and actually have something explain to you, what is this? Why is it? What's the impact and how can I fix it? Has been very helpful to see like, oh, okay, so this library shouldn't be used because of these reasons. Oh, okay. And then the additional vulnerability remediation is basically just you click a button and it will apply the fix that it found. That's being worked on right now. But I think will be the next thing that's on the roadmap to be released in GA at least. It's usable as an experiment at the minute, but we're working really hard to GA that soon. So another thing I wanted to show, again, don't want to talk too much about AI in a DevSecOps talk. So transparency is one of the things that GitLab has pretty high. If you know us, then you know that we do a lot of things in the open. Our handbook is entirely online. Our documentation is pretty thorough. As such, we figured that it would be a good idea to have an AI transparency center as well. So you can read all of our ethics for the development, which continuity plans we have, and what kind of models we use, where it comes from, and all that kind of stuff. So if you have more questions about our AI specifically, then I recommend you go to the AI Transparency Center. Right, so now it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. At least I've been very nervous about this because I don't think I've prayed too hard to the demo gods, but I'm going to try to show you more about, what I just talked about. Showed you loads of screenshots, but let's show you in person. So I am in need of a sip of water. I mean, I'm having fun. I hope everybody else is having fun as well. Anyway, so is this big enough or is this too big, too light, whatever? Okay, cool. So let's have a look. So I'm going to be walking you through Compliance Center, how to enforce scan execution and merge request approvals. That's kind of the flow that I want to show you. And then after that, I'm going to show you from the developer's perspective what the collaboration from the merge request looks like. I hope, if everything goes well. So this is the application that we're using today. It's just a simple thing. It's very insecure. It's insecure by design. Hopefully I can get some results. That's kind of the goal. So inside my, we're in my top level group. We're going into a subgroup later, but I'm in my top level group called Demo Ultimate. And from there you can manage everything in the Compliance Center. So the Compliance Center, as I mentioned before, you've got a standards adherence. You can group that by different things. For example, we have the GitLab standard, which is currently three different things that it's checking for. Is having at least 2 approvals, preventing authors as approvers, and then preventing committers as approvers. So it's, again, this is my group. So obviously for a lot of things it's going to fail because I'm a group of 1 and a bunch of my best friends. The other things we can do here is check for violations. So if there's been any violations, you can, well, see that it's doing a lot of things the wrong way. But the things that I wanted to show you specifically in the Compliance Center is about frameworks. So as I mentioned again, these are pretty much just arbitrary labels. But with these labels, you can apply certain settings to certain projects. So today I'm going to work with 2 of them. The other 2 are pretty much just there to show you that you can add that if you want. Why is this not? Okay, there we go. So I'm using the merge request approval framework and the scan execution framework. Again, these are very arbitrary, but hopefully that's going to make sense at some point. So when applied, merge request approvals will be required. Where it contains 2 policies, or at least the policies that are attached are container scanning approval and critical and high vulnerabilities approval. And then the scan execution framework that I have here will enforce scan execution. And then it will have like 4 different scanners that it's going to check. So I will show that a bit more in depth shortly. So I'm in the group that I'm going to, the subgroup that I'm going to use for the rest of the demonstration. Dominique. And from here you can also see that the scope is applied to certain compliance frameworks. So what I just saw from the Compliance Center is also visible from the policies themselves. You get a bit more information from what the policy does. So for example, the container scanning approval will require 1 approval from our security team if any of the following occur. When it finds something, if it's high critical, if it's new and it needs triage and it's not a false positive, then we need approval from the security team. If you wanted to create a new policy, you can either choose the merge request approval policy or the scan execution policy. And I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. It's either, you can do it in YAML mode if you want. If you feel like you're, if you love YAML, you can do it. But otherwise, you can just use rule mode and then just like click through the things. I think it's much easier. Right, I'm not actually going to make one, but you can tie it down. So what will happen if you do have if you create a policy, where's my, yes. So this is the repository. Actually, I'm going to go back to Dominique Corp itself. So this is my company. I made the logo myself. And I have a security and compliance subgroup, an application subgroup, and a teams subgroup. So the teams I'm using to allocate permissions to things. So I've got a development team, I've got a leadership team, I've got a product team, and a security team. My applications hold an application, and the security and compliance folder or group will have my security policy project. So I actually have it here. So this is the actual security policy project. And if you, as I said, if you do like YAML, then this is what that looks like from a file perspective. So this can also be locked down in a way that you need the same merge request approvals. So because it could live in a different subgroup, that subgroup can have different rules and it could have different responsibilities. So if you have particular people that need to be involved in the setting up of these policies, then that would be a good thing to do. Right. Okay, so I showed you the compliance center, I showed you the policies, I showed you where the security policies live, and let's now go into the actual repository. Go back to, oh, where are we? Oh, never changed something 2 hours before the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to my application. I'm going to my application, yeah. So at the moment, there's no labels applied. So I did already make a change earlier just to show you what that looks like. So I've got a merge request in my application. Show me some changes without the compliance frameworks. I have a small pipeline. It's marked as draft, so it's not mergeable at the moment. But if we go to the pipelines, for example, these are the steps involved. So there's not much there. Got some simple nodes. It will, it's just the build step, and then we've got 2 random tests, and then it will deploy. Okay, let's go really quickly back to my policies. So what I'll do first is I will... what am I going to do first? Yeah, so I'm going to first enable the scan execution framework. So what I'm going to show you is that when I enable it, when I run the pipeline again, it will add a whole bunch of extra scans. So if I open it up, you can see there, it will trigger some SAST, it will trigger secret detection, container scanning, dependency scanning, and DAST. So like 5 scanners. So it will add extra stuff to it. So it's pretty easy. Simple, I should say. If we go to projects over here, and I've got my very secure notes application, and I'm going to add the scan execution framework. So if we go back to my repository, and I refresh the page, then you see that the scan execution framework has now been added. Now, from the compliance center, you can bulk add things, or you can make things default. So if there's some things that you always want to have run, you always want to have the same merge request approvals, always want to run the same sort of scans and everything, you can apply that as default. But for everybody who's actually working on the code, you can see that this is now being enforced. Let's go to the merge request. Be that one. Actually, yeah, here we are. Pipelines. Let's run a pipeline. In here. Okay. Ta-da! So now it's in the same branch, it's in the same application, and now you see that there's a bunch of extra things added. And I also see that I've made a boo-boo because apparently I've got the dependency scan in there twice, so I'm assuming that will fail. But it will just go and do its thing. So now I see like there will be a whole bunch of extra tests being done. Now what that means for us working on the code is that there is a whole bunch of extra widgets coming up as soon as the scans have completed with everything that is potentially being, any potential findings, right? Okay, so this is now going to run. What I'm going to do next is I'll create a new issue. From there, I'm going to create a new merge request, make some new changes, and then hopefully, actually, should I also do it now? Again, I made some changes to my demo literally yesterday, so I'm trying to like fly through here so everybody can see the cool things, and then also have time to ask questions. Maybe. What's it doing? Yeah. I'm going to do it anyway, right? So I'm going to make a new issue. Here. So normally if I do a demo, I've got like 4 different users. I made like a product manager, developer, security person, and long story short, usually I change, log in and out with different people. But in this case, I'm not going to bother because that's going to take too long. Right, so I'm going to create an issue. I've got a little AI action here to help me generate an issue description. Let's update. Oh, wait. Right, okay. Come up with a prompt. Write me an issue description for an update on the front page. Use a lot of emoji and make it short. See what that works, what it does. All right, so let's have a look at the preview. Front page updates. Okay, that's kind of cute. It looks use a little newspaper. Well, that's fine. It's not quite what I wanted, but it's trying with the limited thing that I said. Test with first CF. Oh, I'm wondering if I should also add. Yeah, I'm going to do that. All right. So it's going all over the place. All right. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to add the merge request approval policy to the same project because I think that it would help to apply. Can I just not? Can I add? How much should I be able to add more? Edit. It's happening live. Yesterday this worked. Let's have a look. Frameworks, merge request approval. And I just add it from here. That used to work too. They make change. Okay, so just one of the things that is good to note is that GitLab releases stuff every month, and it also means that sometimes you think you know things, and then all of a sudden things get changed. Why is this now not? All right, fine. Actually, maybe just do it a different way. Choose one bulk action. Okay, fine. See if it works this way. Also no. Okay, fine. Right. Okay, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to remove the other framework and then add the merge request policy thing, because otherwise it's going to mess up my story. Anyway, why does that not work? Right, let's go back here for a second, see if we can. So I added that one. Oh, yeah, okay, I know what to do. Sorry, I will get to the get to the point at some point. I'm excusing myself for the. All right, I'm going to edit the policy, and I'm going to do it that way. So I'm going to change this to the scan execution framework policy instead. So that will be the scope. So any project that has this particular label attached will have this merge request approval policy as well. And it's also going to say previously existing. Why not like this? Because I want to make sure that it finds things. And then I need a approval. Oh, no, I don't. Interesting. All right, so normally you would not have non-approvals on the security policy. I did actually have this in my project previously, but it also meant that I had to go through the approval hoops every 2 seconds, which was very annoying. So I removed it into a different project. But in your organizations, I would definitely not do it that way, because reasons. This is just for the purposes of my demo. Okay, so let's go back to my pipeline, see what's happening. Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to bin this. Yes, because I made a change in a policy. And yeah, so what happened was the following. I had two compliance framework labels. One of them was supposed to add the merge request approval policies, and the other one was supposed to add the scan execution policies. Now, for some reason, and I'm not sure why this changed or if I just made a boo-boo, I can't apply two frameworks to the same project. So instead, I made the policy scope of the merge request approval policy to focus on the actual correct label that also has the scan execution policies, just to be able to show you the things. So it's happening live. I have 6 minutes left apparently, so Right. I just want to show you a merge request with some stuff in it, so that makes it, nice to see the things. Well, let's have a look. I think it's going to fail on the extra dependency scanning. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's go run some root cause analysis and see what's happening here. So this is one thing that's still in progress. Literally every Duo functionality will have a little Tanuki logo, like our little logo, apart from root cause analysis. And I've been asking for that. I hope they're going to add it to it, because it's nice to be able to find it. What's happening here? Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not going to be able to fix that right now, but that's fine. What's it doing? Merge request. Is this what I wanted? La, 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 la. Right, okay, so it has found some stuff, and this is, again, from the merge request view. So as we can see at the moment, there's the approvals that I was talking about, right? So we have the one approval is required because it's found something, and you can see who is able to approve this if needed. And then there's an optional approval, because I've set it to optional, for development team, because that's in the code owners files. Everything that's changed in the nodes folder will require something. So the license compliance has detected a bunch of stuff, and the security scan has also detected a bunch of stuff. Specifically in SAST and container scanning, which is why the policy that I just enabled on this project is giving me this option. So what happens if you do not use Duo? What happens is you can say, okay, let me just click on this. And if you're a developer, you're going through this and you find something, you do have a lot of information already. But if you, for example, go to anything else, doesn't matter. But it'll be like particular scanner at the moment where you can click, explain this vulnerability, and then it will also give you, the who, what, where, when, and how to fix it. But yeah, again, I've got 4 minutes left, so let's just, all right. Go back to my merge request real quick. Did I say all the things that I wanted? Yes. Okay. Well, that's if you do want to see more demo, we have. This is not where I wanted to go. Here. Yeah. All right. So I hopefully have given you a bit more insight of how you can use GitLab to manage all of your frameworks and all of your policies and all that kind of good stuff. So, according to the Washington Post, the EU Cyber Resilience Act could make the Europe, and as a whole, kind of a leader on the kind of cybersecurity bits and pieces. But it will definitely change how policies are being maintained. Like I've had so many conversations with customers in the rest of mainland Europe, and they're all very like, "Oh my God, we need to understand." There will be similar things popping up in different places. So if you didn't have to deal with it now, you might have to deal with it in the future. So there will definitely be ripple effects throughout other continents. So if you want to know more about GitLab, we're at booth G2. If you wanted to continue this conversation, we have some stickers and snacks and just nice, nice chats if you wanted to just come hang out. And yeah, so I've got 2 minutes left. Thank you very much. My name is Dominique. If you have any questions, let me know. You had a question about identity access management. What? Sorry, do you have a microphone? That's going to be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. That was an excellent talk, by the way.
Thanks.
At the very start, you had a screen where you talked about identity and access management being an attack vector on your source code repositories. To what extent does signing commits inside of something like GitLab actually help mitigate against that sort of attack?
So that's very, very. Do you have a problem with this at the minute, or is it just personal?
It's not. I've seen. We've had discussions about whether or not to sign at work. I've seen some articles that people have published on things like LinkedIn where they're arguing against signing commits, and I don't really know what to think is the right answer?
I think with a lot of these things, like it kind of depends on what the requirements are for your organization. Like we do like sign our commits because that's just like what the process is. And for the additional security of like we have a really large corporate security department that focuses on like, okay, how are we doing things? Are we compliant? You know, like loads of people are doing this. And it is truly something that is highly dependent on what your workflows are and what your requirements are. And, you know, just signing your commits is not going to help you with everything, but it might be like a small cognitive machine.
So from your perspective, is it something we probably should all be doing then?
Well, again, it depends. Like it's definitely something to look into. I mean, yeah, but like for other organizations, like I know a bunch of people that say like, oh, I don't really do this because it just slows things down, and it's just like we track things in other methods. So it's mostly to make sure that you know who did what, where, and when, and if you have a different method of doing that, then that's also fine. Anyway, so there's like a really like flashing screen in my thing going like time's up. So if you want, I can really invite everybody. We're literally downstairs next to the coding cafe thing. So like we have a bunch of more people. We'll be here to answer any requests. We're here all week. So if anybody else has any more questions, then please feel free to pop by. Thank you so much, everyone.